Howdy. Thank you so much for everyone being on tonight. My name is Ross Morales-Urquetto. For those who've been watching all of these in the series, I'm back. And I also want to give a special shout out to Brad Bauman, who filled in for me last week. That was very generous and kind of him. Uh, just as a reminder, we do these calls because we want to give folks a space to be able to get into action. So the idea is to get folks fired up, to learn something about volunteering. Special thanks to our partners at the National Democratic Training Committee, and then also hear about other types of volunteer opportunities. Tonight, we're going to hear from some really awesome folks. You'll hear from one of my favorite humans that I've had the opportunity to meet this cycle, Josh Gad. You'll also hear from Deputy Campaign Manager and longtime friend Rob Flaherty from the Harris Walls campaign. And you're also going to get an awesome training from Zach at the National Democratic Training Committee. He'll be talking about tips for effective phone banking. Before we jump in, there's a QR code on your screen. If you scan it and fill it out, we'll be able to keep you up to date with all of the latest volunteer opportunities that we have coming in our way. And with that, and without further ado, y'all aren't here to listen to me talk. I would like to kick this to Josh Gad, who is one of my favorite people.
One of or your favorite?
That's tough. It's like
That's
asking me to
fair.
pick between, favorite kids.
I'm so thrilled and honored to be here tonight. It's become um my waking goal every day is I wake up and I ask myself, have I done everything that I can possibly do today with less than 3 weeks to the election to ensure that democracy doesn't crumble? Uh, I then make it a part of my daily activities to have at least three things that I'm actively doing. And then I go to sleep at night. And once again, I ask myself the question, did I do everything today in order to ensure that I have staved off the end of democracy? Um, it's becoming cliche to say the most important election of our lifetime, but hear those words. It really is the most important election of our lifetime. And I think the more we hear from the candidate, Donald Trump, the more the pit in my stomach grows larger exponentially by the day. Um, Maya Angelou said, believe somebody when they tell you who they are. He's telling us who he is. He's intent on revenge, not on leadership, not on empathy or humanity, which has never been a particularly strong suit for him, but on actively doing everything in his best interest and everything in your worst interest. Um, on the flip side of that equation, we have somebody who has inspired hope in a way that I haven't felt it in a long time. And those two things right now are they're just such vast contrasting opportunities, right? One is an opportunity for, I believe, a really bright and loaded with potential future, and one is a dystopian hellscape nightmare that I have, grown tired of watching on Handmaid's Tale through 5 seasons, to the point that I don't really want to be a participant in making that show a documentary. Those are the options here. There's no middle option. If you stay home, you might as well be kicking the can for Trump, right? So those are the two options. And it is up to us to convince voters just how important and how consequential and how dire this is. And it takes a lot of effort and you'll get a lot of pushback, but it's our job to push through that and convince and activate and push and inspire and educate. And that's our job. And that is going to become an even more all-consuming job for me as we get closer and closer to that window. And remember, now every second counts. A couple of weeks ago, it didn't, but today, Georgia has early voting going, and they are coming out to vote. State by state now, people are getting their ballots and they are making their decisions. And if they are making their decisions without getting a phone call, without getting a knock on their door, they may be decisions that they end up regretting. And it is our job to educate them and tell them why they may regret the decision if they don't vote for Kamala Harris. So I implore each of you who are already doing everything you think is imaginably possible to imagine just a little bit more. Go the extra mile. And I know we're all exhausted, and I know that we're all unbelievably scared, but I want us to turn that fear into activism, into non-stop activism. And I want to turn that dread into joy and inspiration. And let's remember that we've gotten a little bit away from that joyful honeymoon period we were in. We need to get back to that because I promise you, the more fun we're having, the more likely it is that Kamala is going to win and become the first female president of the United States of America. And I said this last time, and I'm going to end this call with the same thing that I said last time because it is why I'm on this call. I, like many of you, am a dad, and I remember waking up the day after Hillary Clinton lost to Donald J. Trump and feeling a sense of existential dread and looking at my daughters and crying and saying, I failed you. I can't do that again. I can't go back there. I owe it to them not to give them a world in which we say this is okay, in which we reward convicted felons and madmen bent on a fascistic future that the United States will crumble under, to just be like, I was too busy that Thursday, 2 weeks before the election, to do everything I could have. And so it is what it is. We cannot do it. Not this time. Not again. Get out there, fight, and I will be by your side, fighting every step of the way. Let's go get Kamala Harris elected president.
Hell yeah. Whatever Rob tells us that we should be doing in a few minutes, I'm gonna go sign up for something extra, just because that was so good and really, really deeply inspiring. And I've already sacrificed quite a bit for this campaign, including lending my wife to the effort, who is probably like somewhere in the office with Rob somewhere right now. But with that, I would like to introduce somebody who has been a longtime friend and I've known since at least 2016, who is the current deputy campaign manager for the Harris Walls campaign, who's going to tell us a little bit about how you can get involved and what's going on in the campaign. I'd like to introduce Rob Flaherty.
Hi, everyone. Hello. I feel like such an idiot because I bought a white dudes for Harris hat, like the cool hat, the trucker hat that like everybody's wearing. And I was like, of course, I'm going to wear it for the call tonight. And then I left it at home like an idiot. So imagine me wearing a white dudes for Harris hat, addressing the white dudes for Harris, and then we'll be good to go. I'm coming to you live from HQ here in Wilmington, Delaware. It is the nicest city in this part of Delaware, and we are here because we believe in Kamala Harris and we believe in the stakes of this election. What I'll say is, first of all, thank you. Groups like White Dudes for Harris, all of our coalition partners are, I think, one of the great hallmarks of this campaign. They are the thing that is helping us make a difference. It is a thing that is unique to the vice president, and it speaks to the hope that Josh talked about, that she is giving people and that people are feeling out there. These groups that spin up organically make a huge difference in our campaign because they excite people, they get people engaged, and they drive our organizing program forward. I mean, this is the thing to think about. Since the vice president became the nominee, more than 1 million people have come to volunteer for the campaign. That is an unbelievable army of people who are out there talking to the voters that we need to talk to every single day. And they're in communities talking to the voters that we need to talk to every day. Because this race is going to come down to a really paper-thin margin. And I'll come back to that. It is going to be close. Like, I'm not breaking any news to you guys. This is a neck and neck race. I think, and we said that from the very, very beginning. Like, this is how it's going to be. And it's going to be fought by people talking to their friends and family, to their neighbors, getting them to turn out, making every call that they can make, every text that they can make, talking to every friend they know is on the fence, sharing that piece of content. All of that stuff matters. Because at the end of the day, here's the thing, right? Like, we're going to spend $1 bazillion in ads. We're going to do all this stuff. There's going to be a bunch of people like me sitting here in this office doing a bunch of things. But at the end of the day, the most trusted messengers in the whole world, in all of the country, are people's friends and family, are the people in their networks talking to them about the stakes in this election. That is what makes the difference. And it could not be more important, that work that you're doing, because again, we have this fundamental contrast in this race between the vice president, who is an optimist about the American future, who's bringing this new way forward, an opportunity economy where everyone can get ahead, making really transformational policy proposals on stuff ranging from home Medicaid all the way to rethinking how we think about taxing the wealthy and all of it. It's we have a transformative vision for the country that is rooted in a new path. And on the other side, you have Donald Trump, whose vision for the country is dark. He is more unstable. He is more unhinged. The stakes in this election could not be higher because he's going to have unchecked power when he gets into office. The Project 2025 plan that would backdoor ban abortion nationwide, cut taxes for wealthy people like Donald Trump, and even gut Social Security and Medicare. These are things that are really like the stakes are high. There is a person whose healthcare is dependent on the outcome of this election. I mean, there are thousands of people who are really looking at the results here, and it is going to make a real difference. And it's going to be a win or a loss is going to be determined by what our volunteers do out there every single day. So the first thing that I need you guys to do is to memorize an address, a web address, a website, a URL, whatever you want to call it. It is go.kamalaharris.com. Go.kamalaharris.com. That is your one-stop shop. Sign up to volunteer, to find events near you, to find events that might not be near you, that you might want to go to. All of these things. That is the best place to go to get started, and you'll find all those opportunities there. And then, from there, we need you to go out and talk to those friends and families and neighbors. Go out there, volunteer, find a shift, find a state, do whatever you can. Get more people to sign up for White Dudes for Harris. That stuff really, really matters down the stretch. What I will say here is we said from the very, very beginning, we were going to be the underdogs in this race. It was the first thing the vice president said, that this is a come from behind. And you just got to believe, because people are putting hope in us. And people are putting hope in the community that is getting behind Kamala Harris. This is an election that is going to come down to 50,000 votes on either side. And we're going to be north of it, and we're going to be south of it. It is going to be close. And I find you can either look at that fact and be terrified, which you probably should be a little bit. It's going to be that close. But I also find it really empowering, because if you don't think that the people on this call can move 50,000 votes, you are totally wrong, period. And if you don't think the people on this call who are volunteering in all of their communities across the country can't move more than that, you are wrong. It is the power of a grassroots campaign, a people-powered campaign, as the vice president likes to say, that we are going to be able to do that. So I come to work every day believing that the vice president is going to be the next president of the United States. I believe that Governor Walz is going to be the next vice president of the United States. And I believe that because of the work on this call and the things that you are doing every day that we see here in HQ that really does move our numbers and then moves numbers down out in the States. So I'm just here to say thank you very much. Thank you for all you're doing. We see you. We appreciate you. We are just so grateful. And we will see you out on the doors, or we'll see you making calls, and just thanks for everything.
Thanks, Rob. I really appreciate it. And for those who maybe don't remember, it's go.kamalaharris.com. You can sign up to knock on doors, make phone calls, get together with folks in your local communities. Anything that you are able to do right now is going to be useful. As Rob was saying, this election will come down to 50,000 votes in a handful of states. None of us want to be the person that's looking back on election day thinking, I wish I had done more. And I think there were probably a lot of us out there who felt that way after the 2016 election. And so I would say, remember, I think Josh gave us a really good reminder of like how that felt right after the election in 2016. And if we want to avoid feeling like that again, then we got to get out there and vote. So we got to get out there and volunteer. So, if you live adjacent to a swing state, there are buses that are taking people into swing states. If you aren't able to get out and all you can do is make calls, that's awesome. We need people to be making phone calls, and that's just as important as everything else. And that's why we're doing this training tonight. Next up in our speaker lineup, we have Zach from the National Democratic Training Committee. He's going to be doing a training for us on effective phone banking. And I will kick it over to you, Zach. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Zach Kautsky joining here from the beautiful and rainy city of Chicago today as a fellow white dude for Harris. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and share my screen so we can kick this off. As somebody else said, every tab that you just saw is one that I actually intend to open. So everybody can see that. And I'm going to start from the beginning here and go to my presenter view. All right. Thanks for joining us. As Ross and others had said, what we're going to be focusing on tonight is tips for effective phone banking and conversations therein. So if you're even a seasoned phone banker, it's always good to get a little refresh. If this is your first time, welcome. You're about to be walked through on one of the easier ways that you can plug in and really make a difference. Just very briefly, Zach Kautsky, he, him, and his, fellow white dude for Harris. I've worked in Democratic politics in one form or another since 2006. At every level you possibly could. Worked for a long time in the labor movement as well. And now I am a managing director of Mercury Public Affairs, based in Chicago, go down to Springfield and DC. I've got 3 kiddos, 8, 6, and 3, long-suffering White Sox fan. And my wife and I live in the north side of Chicago there. I got my contact info. If you want, you can join my nervous tweeting. It's Zach Outs at 84, just turned 40 a couple months ago, hard to admit and swallow that down. And that's my work email, so feel free to reach out. All right, so today again, we're part of the series that White Dudes for Harris have been engaging on. We've got tips for effective phone banking tonight, and then the next 2 are going to be really essential in how to help make supporters aware of their plan to vote. You would maybe take it for granted for those of you that are on the call, but folks a lot of times need to actually think through multiple times how they're actually going to get themselves to the ballot box or how they're actually going to fill out that vote by mail application. So those are the next 2 trainings that are going to be coming up here, and we welcome you again to bring yourself, your network over to this live stream so you can learn how to plug in. Main learning objective today is going to be, again, just primarily reviewing the best ways by which you can get on the phone and start talking with targeted voters and volunteers across the swing states on behalf of the Harris and Walz campaign. Real quickly here, we'll just always do a little bit of an icebreaker. I believe Rhoda is going to be able to share some of this in the chat here. But if you want to just drop into the chat, what was the last time you received a call from the campaign or political cause? And what was their ask? Why were they doing it? And if you want to go ahead and share that, you can do so, and she'll put a couple here in the chat, and I am happy to share that then, so we all have an understanding of what our common experiences are in all of this. I'll share myself while we're waiting for some of those to come in. I had one actually today from the Harris Walls campaign that they were asking for me to make a donation. But just Friday, I got one from an organization in my state in Illinois here, Operation Swing State, that was asking me as a volunteer to help reach out to other people that have signed up to get them to go to Michigan and Wisconsin on that. So we had some unique ones come across our way here. So I see here, someone asked if I can make the White Sox good again. I cannot, so don't rib me too hard on that. And someone said that they've received a lot of texts. Yeah, we're all getting a lot more texts these days. It's a good way to, kind of remove the social anxiety from engaging, but it's always not the most effective, because I'm sure we're all starting to ignore those that are coming through. Somebody else said they get a ton of donation emails. Yeah. Hard to, once you give to one, you're seemingly giving to everybody, or at least they think you will. And daily, hard to tell if it's coming directly from the campaign. Yeah, there's a lot of organizations, a lot of affiliate groups that are trying to put their shoulder into this campaign. And so they are starting to reach out. And again, if you've been engaged, or if you're finding yourself on a live stream like this, you've likely been on some other list that some other group is trying to get in touch with you. And that poor person that says, I get 20 texts a day, Godspeed. All right. So that was the icebreaker. I'm getting them, you're getting them, but they're still important. And for a lot of folks, you'd be surprised. They've never donated, they've never volunteered, they're just living their lives. And so they're not on all these lists for activation, but they're going to be on a campaign's list for voting. So this is our little intro slide here. Again, intro to phone banking. What is phone banking? It is easiest way to explain. It's a group of volunteers and staff that are getting on the phone and calling a targeted list of voters or potentially volunteers. Namely, you are ideally starting early on in a campaign and pretty much all the way up through the election, persuading undecided voters that have already been modeled or ID'd as being undecided, and that you're trying to get another touch point into them, maybe with a more targeted script or specific issue that you're able to follow up on. You're getting likely and confirmed supporters to make sure that they actually create their vote plan, their plan to vote, or maybe inviting them to an upcoming rally or a training session. On that end, trying to kind of bring that ladder of engagement once you're an ID'd as a strong supporter, getting them to actually plug into the campaign. And then you're also recruiting, again, confirmed. We've got, hundreds, thousands of campaign offices all throughout the country, and they're not going to fill themselves. So you've got a lot of times organizers or key seasoned volunteers that are reaching out to these known supporters or folks that have signed up online or at an event that said they want to get more involved to actually pull them into the campaign and get more involved. So there's different types of ways that you'll get asked to phone bank. A lot of times, particularly as a newbie and someone that's run elections, I'll start somebody out if it's their first time calling the most friendly of the friendlies, i.e. those people that have ID'd themselves as supporters and likely to volunteer. And then, kind of working your way up through likely and confirmed supporters, and then ultimately turning them on to the persuaded undecided voters. But this won't surprise anyone, especially in an election like this. There is the most undecided voters that are yet to be called, and those are the ones that we really got to spend our time doing it. So why phone bank? Particularly in the digital age, it's one of the easiest things to do remotely. So I'm in the blue state of Illinois. Phone numbers and texts that I've done when Raphael Warnock was in his runoff, because I was dialing into Georgia over there. So anybody can plug in anywhere, even if you don't have, a quote unquote local office or campaign going on by you. Helps reach voters that can't be canvassed. I live in a city. I've got apartment buildings all throughout my ward and my precinct that I'll never be able to knock on and actually talk to somebody, so that I can mark that list then, and other people maybe have marked that list in a canvassing packet as unaccessible. Then that list would get prioritized for phone banking going forward. You'll also be able to talk to a lot more people per hour than you would door knocking. I'm a field rat, have been since the first day I started working in elections. I love canvassing, but it is a tedious, arduous task, and you're not super efficient in it. That's okay because it's a high quality contact, but for a lot of folks, if you just need to kind of grind this out and clean up your list, phone banking is irreplaceable in that. And again, it's an effective mobilization tactic, really easy way for you to contact volunteers, reconfirm supporters, turn them into volunteers on that end. Finding opportunities to dial in. Hopefully a bunch of you are in swing states or going to swing states or in a swing district for Congress or Senate on that end. So you can just walk over to your local campaign office or local party office or dial into them and say what have they got going on for upcoming events. If not, Mobilize is a fantastic, kind of central coordination where all types of campaigns will list their events, and you can find either a race, region, issue, and sign up for it, and you can dial right into that. You can also go again, we're all on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat. A lot of campaigns will also be prioritizing and promoting their own forthcoming volunteer opportunity events on their social handles. Or you can also just connect in with non-campaign and progressive organizations that aren't, candidate specific, but Sierra Club, Planned Parenthood, in Illinois, Personal PAC, LGBT organizations, White Dudes for Harris, all will be sponsoring their own events that you can find on that. So there's a million ways to plug in. Again, you don't have to be in the state to actually do it, and we'll be talking about how to best utilize your time there. What to expect when you're actually getting started phone banking. You're likely going to sign up and say, hey, I'm ready to phone bank. You'll get hopefully a confirmation call from a staffer or from a super volunteer to say, hey, Zach, we've got you signed up to join us at Thursday night at 6 o'clock over at the office, or we're going to do a virtual one where we're going to have a bunch of people log in at 7 o'clock, get a 15-minute training, and then we'll dial into the virtual phone bank room and get to work. You'll then get you'll receive a training, what system we're using, what script we're using, anything to mainly prioritize, and certainly what universe you're going to be calling into will also be reviewed in any of that, so you have an idea of who you're calling, why you're calling, and the script that you're going to, and then you're going to start dialing. Phone banking is not super hard. There's that interpersonal aspect to it, that's different than canvassing, so the training isn't going to be as intense. It's usually, again, a lot more specific to a type of universe or a specific type of reason. Again, you're inviting people to come to an event, or you're calling volunteers to reconfirm for an upcoming canvass, or you're dialing back into a pre-identified list of undecided voters, or again, issue-specific voters. So through canvassing and other phone banking, someone's been tagged in a voter file there to prioritize climate change, or their supporters of minimum wage. You might be calling a specific list with that to follow up with a more detailed script about that candidate's position on it. Prepping space to make calls. I don't know if the training committee chose this specific photo, but I just got to give a shout out to my boy, Bobby Morgan. He's a state representative up in the northern suburbs here in Illinois, longtime buddy of mine, most amazingly passed the assault weapons ban here recently because he represents Highland Park, which was unfortunately targeted during a mass shooting at a 4th of July parade a year ago here. And so he's a state rep, and this is a photo of his campaign office here, which I love, and I'll have to show him that. Going forward, he'll be very proud of it. But once you actually start dialing in, again, if you're in a campaign office, if you're at home, if you're at a friend's house, what are you going to want to do to make it the most effective? One, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a charger, because the days of just having a bunch of plugged in desk lines are kind of over. So you're usually coming with your own cell phone, or you're using a burner one provided by the campaign. So you want to make sure you've actually got a charger and a computer if you're working off of a dialer system, or if you're following the results online, or if you're doing it via paper list. You want to reduce noise and distractions. A lot of time the phone bank room will get loud, so they try and space people out, but you also might want to, if you're somebody that's easily distracted, go find yourself a quiet corner. Again, if you're going to be relying on logging your results immediately through an online app, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a good internet connection on that. If you're doing a paper list, not that big of a deal. Find comfortable seating. Hopefully you're not going to be getting up and down a whole bunch. I will say, though, I am somebody that likes to pace when I call on that. And so just make yourself comfortable. Give yourself space to wander. Give yourself space to sit. And then, give yourself a little snack. I've got my little mood setter recess drink here. So grab some snacks, grab some water, not too much drinks though, so you're getting up and going to the bathroom all the time, either on that end. Google Voice, I know that NDTC isn't endorsing any specific project or product, but I will say, like I said, when I was making phone calls for Raphael Warnock last go around, I was not getting any pickup. Illinois. And then I said, I'm going to go on Google Voice, where I've already got an account, and I found a 404 Atlanta area code, and I noticed my contact rate went way up. So depending on where you're calling, you can always find a local phone number. And again, if you're someone that values your privacy, and you want to use your actual phone number that if somebody calls back to, or they, you find an asshole and they're harassing you afterwards on that, and you don't want to use your personal phone number, can always do a quickie recreate one. Again, super easy, free, and again, makes it a little bit more personal over that way. Again, generally, there's two types of ways that you are going to be making phone calls. Hand dialing is literally sitting there with a, paper list here of phones that you're going to be dialing, names, what prior contact you probably had is going to be included in the notes, and you're actually going to be taking your phone, plugging those phone numbers in, hitting call, and waiting for them to pick up. Depending on the size of the campaign, a lot of them will deploy, or certainly later in a campaign, will deploy what is often referred to as a dialer, which is a automated list where they'll dump in millions of phone numbers. It's auto dialing all of them until they get somebody live, and then it automatically connects you. But you've got to be doing that with an internet connection, and you've got to be doing it logged into whatever system that is. So two of the more popular ones are Through Talk or Hub Dialer. Again, depending on the campaign, they may be prioritizing that to initially get the list cleaned up, or just they have so many volunteers that this is the most effective way to do it, and they don't have to cut a bunch of lists and then do data entry on it. So there's usually just two ways that you're generally going to be doing phone banking like that. I would maybe add the third on it being that if you get a volunteer list, they might just literally provide you like a sign-up sheet from an event and say, hey, can you follow up with all these people, get their emails, or just reconfirm that they're all coming in for the event that we sign them up for next Thursday, next Saturday, whatever it's going to be. Contact rate expectations on this. Expect to talk to not that many people. We're all getting a ton of calls now. Technology has gotten better on screening out unsolicited calls. If you're dialing from, maybe a campaign account, it may have already been flagged by prior contacts as a spam call, and so that'll be harder to get through some of the filters. But if, again, you're dialing, manually, expect about 30 dials an hour, or at least 30 attempts an hour. Not all that dissimilar from canvassing on that, but you can kind of kick it up a little bit on that end. Most campaigns, again, will try and call through, particularly the persuasion list, 3 to 5 times. You'd say, my God, why? You're not talking to that many people every time you call them. And also, every time you call through it, you're finding more bad numbers. You're finding more disconnects, finding somebody that passed away. You're finding somebody that refused. So those lists are getting smaller and smaller. And hopefully once you're talking to a persuasion target and you're converting them into a supporter, they're getting moved off that list and onto a supporter list that'll be treated differently on that. So again, expect in an average hour, you may only talk to 2 or 3 people. Usually that contact rate can go up, again, if you're using a dialer, but a lot of times those aren't as quality of a call. There's always a little bit of a tech delay in that call actually being transferred over to you. We've all gotten those where you're like, hello, hello, and then you hear like, boop, and someone actually comes on the line. But again, that 5 to 10% on average is pretty standard across any campaign and any list on that. All right, I'm going to take a break, take a drink before we move on here. That is phone banking. That's generally why you're doing it, how you're doing it, who you're doing it for. So now we're going to be talking about the type of conversations you're actually going to be having on that call. All right. So when you're going to get given that list of volunteers or voters to call, you're not just going to say, hey, good luck, tell us if they're a supporter. You're always going to have a script matched up with that. So depending on what what specific list you are calling, why you're calling it, certainly when you are in a specific phase of a campaign. They'll have a script specific to it. You'll have this trained up prior to any phone bank on that by the staff or volunteer, and they'll walk through key points of any specific script. We want this to sound conversational. We want it to sound normal, not robotic, not canned, not nervous. We want it to just sound friendly on that end. But there's going to be core components that no matter how the call is going, you really need to hit, right? So you're always going to start with, you're going to introduce yourself. You're going to, confirm who you're actually trying to get in touch with, asking, hey, can I talk to Ross? No, sorry, let me go get him on that end. And then there's usually a treed out or branched out component of that script. Once you confirm that you're talking to who you want to talk to, who's on your list, you want to start working down that script, confirming that they're actually planning on voting in the election, who they're voting for. And then you can get into more of a just general conversation on that. But there's kind of branched scripts that move that conversation along for you. Okay. So there's all different types of scripts, but again, they're always going to be provided for you. They're going to be reviewed ahead of time, and they're going to have key differences between them. So here's 6, just general types of scripts that you would be expected to find. Maybe not necessarily all just 3 weeks out from an election like we're facing, but if you're plugging into any campaign, an issue ID, excuse me, following up again on a prior contact that they had made, that they had offered up. Hey, I really care about reproductive rights. Hey, I really care about public education, whatever it's going to be. Volunteer recruitment, that again, you're calling pre-identified supporters or former volunteers and inviting them back into the campaign, moving them up that ladder of engagement. You're following up maybe with a specific list, which is really going to be key right now, of ID'd supporters that we know have had a vote by mail absentee ballot sent to them. And so you're going to be calling them and saying, have you turned it in yet? Have you turned it in yet? Have you turned it in yet? Another one would be a vote by mail request. Maybe in some states there's more restrictive, so it's not automatic. So you've got to encourage them to get a vote by mail request. Usually a lot of times that'll be older folks or students on that end. My favorite is a vote planning one. Again, calling previously confirmed supporters to say, okay, let's talk through. How are you going to vote? Do you like voting early? Do you like voting on election day? Do you vote before you go to work, after you drop the kids off to school? Are you doing it on your lunch hour? Are you doing it after work? Start thinking that through and help them plan that process. And then you're logging all of that data so the campaign knows if this person said they were going to vote in the morning, they haven't voted yet by the afternoon, we're going to prioritize them for a door knock and for another phone call and for another text. And then the general one that you'll probably be doing and have an opportunity, particularly in the Harris campaign, but really any campaign, almost all the way up through election day, is persuasion. These are voters that have, again, been brought into our voter contact list, but haven't yet been ID'd as a supporter, undecided, or not a supporter. Core elements that are going to be similar, though, across all scripts. You're going to have to introduce yourself. You're going to ask that you are indeed talking to the person that you want to be talking to, inform them on who you're calling on behalf of. Have that script conversation then. Again, not canned. You're not reading from a script, but you're trying to just kind of make it conversational, but always bringing it back to core questions and components therein. And then always, always, always thanking them for their time, for their honesty, and certainly for, hopefully, their support. Guiding principles of any phone interaction. Again, you want it to feel normal. You want it to be conversational. It's weird for some people to talk about politics, but if you're smiling while you're dialing, I coach Little League for my son. So we even say when somebody's up to bat, they've got to smile because you just feel like you're going to have more confidence when you're doing it. You want to sound like you're smiling when you're talking to someone because it's a conversation. You're not beating them into submission by just reading off a litany of talking points. You're hoping to engage in an actual, robust and authentic conversation. You want to be yourself. You're always going to introduce yourself as Zach. Say, I'm a dad in your neighborhood or in your state, calling on behalf of my chosen candidate because I believe in them. You want to be yourself, and you want to be honest. If they tell you, if they ask who you're calling for or why you're calling, how did you get my phone number? You want to be honest with them. Phone numbers are often public information because you had to fill it out when you registered to vote. Campaigns obviously have other ways by building their list, matching phone numbers up to voters as well. But this is the beauty of democracy. As a citizen to citizen, I can call you up and I can encourage you to vote, and I can have a conversation with you on it. So you want to be honest, even if they're like, how the hell did you get my phone number? Core components out of these 5 that we'll review here to a great call. Again, always introducing yourself. Hey, my name is Zach. I'm calling on behalf of the Kamala Harris Tim Walz campaign. Can I talk to Russ? You're taking clear notes on that. The campaign is going to specifically lay out questions that they're going to want answers to. You've got to log that. Ideally, you're doing it with a computer in front of you, so you're doing it in real time. Otherwise, there's going to be, even in the printout, paper scripts, probably columns that you would fill out at any point in time if they're voting early, if they've gotten their absentee ballot yet, if they're planning on supporting you, if they want a yard sign, or if they want to volunteer. You're going to be taking that data, and then you're going to be entering it. You're going to be following yourself again, but you still want to be authentic. You don't want to sound like you're reading off a script, but you're working from a script. You're working off of the script. So you're going to maybe take some time to review it, maybe change the syntax a little bit so it's more like you. I've always noticed if there's something written out that clearly I didn't write, and I keep tripping over the structure of the sentence or how to pronounce something, I'll rework it myself on that. Focus your attention again on delivering the clear and specific asks. Those scripts are going to have specific things that they need to know by the end of that phone call that you've got to get to. So even if you get a talker, if you can't tell, I'm a talker on this, and somebody really starts kind of going in circles and they're talking about how all the things they're doing for it. That's great, grand, and good. But ma'am, I want to make sure that I know when you're going to be voting so that I can use my valuable time here as a volunteer of a candidate we're both supporting to get this information, and so I can go find more voters. Do you mind telling me, are you going to be voting early? Oh, you already got your absentee ballot? Great. When do you plan on filling it out? Those are all things that a campaigner are going to want to know and then be able to utilize. So your data and following that script is going to be really key in it. And let's be honest, particularly in this type of an election, you're going to run into some jerks. That's okay. Maybe you caught someone on a bad day. Maybe their kid's driving them crazy. Maybe they had a horrible day at work. Maybe they got stuck just in horrific traffic because it rained for the first time in Chicago in weeks, and that was why I was late to join this call when I was supposed to sign in. That's all right. You don't have to make an excuse, though, for why you're doing what you're doing, and you don't have to make an excuse for reaching out to them. They may not be nice to you, but you always can be nice to them. But the easiest thing to do is, I understand, thank you so much for your time, have a great day, and move on. Again, that's valuable data for a campaign. If somebody has been marked rude or refusing or hostile multiple times, they're not going to be put back into a call list on it. If somebody said, this is the 50th call I've gotten, leave me alone, you're probably not winning votes if you keep calling them. Those are valuable things for any campaign to log and know. All right. What if a number is bad or disconnected? Totally normal. People are changing phone numbers all the time. It's not a big deal. Again, it's actually a good thing. You're helping clean up lists so a campaign's not wasting time going back to a bad number. Again, either way, we're going to want to make sure that we're always logging that data. So you may get frustrated, but again, publicly available phone numbers are good. Sometimes those campaigns are buying public data. Sorry, my dog is trying to make a bed in the background here. So if that's what you hear, you see something fuzzy moving in the background, that's Bella. Campaigns have bought data. And so they've got maybe some bad phone numbers that they purchased and have thrown onto the voter file. It's all gravy, though, to be finding those out now and not during GOTV when we really need to be using good phone numbers to get in touch with folks. So not a big deal. You're not doing anything wrong. And again, if they're upset about the numbers of calls they're getting, now more than ever, there's all types of campaigns, all types of organizations that are dialing into these, very targeted areas of states or regions. And particularly as you get closer to an election, and if somebody hasn't voted yet, and they've been previously identified in the coordinated campaign as supporting their local state representative, well, the Senate campaign, the county executive campaign, and the presidential campaign might be calling them as well. They will be getting a lot of phone calls. Hopefully, though, that is moving them towards actually voting and us getting them off the list. The thing I always say is, how many calls am I going to be getting here? One, it shows how important your vote is, how badly people understand the value that that vote will make. Two, the sooner you vote, the sooner I can take you off my list. So go and get it done and we can move on. And you just got to keep powering through. Again, depending on the day, You don't know what they're facing. Somebody maybe has a bad day, but another phone call from another volunteer could go great. If you find, again, a Republican or somebody that really disagrees, when I did this for Warnock most recently, I found there was a couple of husbands answering the phone when I was really trying to get to the wives or daughters, and they were not super kind. And that's okay. I'm not going to waste my time on it, though. Thank you very much, sir. As soon as he hears that Zach is calling on behalf of the Warnock campaign, I'm not putting, we're not voting for him. That's fine, but I'm trying to get in touch with Julie, your daughter. Is she around? I'm not putting you in touch. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time. You have a great day. And just move on. There's no reason to upset yourself, get them more upset, and waste your time. Bottom line, though, nothing happens if it doesn't get logged in the van. You've got to get the data. It's got to be accurate. It's got to be truthful. And you're going to log it either in the app or on that form. And then you're hopefully sticking around to help with some data entry afterwards. Because all that's doing is helping kind of funnel all of these contacts, all of these voters down into a much more manageable list. So whatever you're doing, you're recording it and you're helping get that data into the overall database you're working off of. All right. We might pause here and take some questions, I think. I see the chat popping up here. And, oh, now we've got to show Bella in that. Well, she buried herself in the pillows back there, so maybe I'll pull her out towards the end here. But I do want to pause. I'm talking fast, but I want to give folks some space here to ask any questions. If you want me to go back to something, I think we've still got a little bit of time. I can maybe go back to one of the slides and refocus on it if I blew through it too quickly. But we are going to make some space here for folks to ask any questions, and we'll try and get them answered. All right, I'm not seeing too many come through, or any come through, so that might be a good thing. Hopefully we haven't lost you yet. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, we got one popping here. Few coming in. Thank you, Ross. All right, here's one. Is there a recommended length of time that you suggest for a phone bank session? Most campaigns are always going to try and schedule for 3 hours, right? But let's be realistic. A lot of us here are parents. A lot of us here have careers. A lot of us here are just tired. Maybe you only can give an hour. Again, 30 calls, 35 calls makes a dent in whatever list it is. But most volunteer shifts for a campaign is going to try and be 3 hours. So 9 to 12, 12 to 3, 3 to 6. And then hopefully you're always sticking around and helping with any data entry or anything else that came through as a follow-up. I worked on a campaign here most recently for a state rep that they would have their phone banks immediately do postcards after that. So they would only schedule for about an hour and a half. Any conversation that you had, they gave you time then to follow up and immediately follow up with a phone or with a postcard saying, hey, Julie, this was Zach. It was great connecting on the phone. Glad you asked about, public education. Go to the website, check it out. Hope to talk to you soon. So it was a nice additional follow-up. It was a smaller campaign, so they didn't have as many calls that they needed to do. In addition to calling, are there tools for texting? There are. We'll be getting through that here right at the end. So good question there that we'll get to here in a minute. What do I find is the best script for young men? Well, I'm not a young man anymore. Like I said, I just turned 40. But if the polls are to be believed, the economy and opportunity is still top of mind, particularly for younger voters that are finding it increasingly hard to, afford maybe moving out of their parents' house, getting a place on their own. So campaigns are going to know what their voters are going to want on that. Again, I've worked in areas that have heavy student populations or more transient, just post-college or, 20-year-old populations. And those scripts are different, and the campaign knew that, right? So I didn't have to really think it through. The campaign, tailored that specifically for me. And any advice on social media campaigning? Man, I am not a digital guy, so no, you'll probably want to go ask an expert on that. But here we're talking about phone banking, talking to live people on that. So I'm going to move on from the questions. but there are great folks in really any campaign now that specifically have more questions on the digital stuff, would be far more experienced in that realm than I would. I'm still on Facebook, if that shows you again my age. All right. Somebody had brought up the texting component to it. Maybe you're a little nervous about texting or about making phone calls to strangers. Almost every campaign is going to have a text bank application now. Again, a lot of times that would be even more tailored. You're not doing a lot of persuasion or ID through texting. You're usually doing that more to contact volunteers or confirming supporters and encouraging them to actually vote early or go to a rally on that end. So text banking, there's absolutely a tool through that. There's obviously different rules around that as well, that there's a lot of times text actually needs to have like a live human behind it, hitting that button so it gets around the FTC regulations on it. So campaigns a lot of times are going to have opportunities to text, and those are almost always through an existing program or platform that you're not going to have to do it from your phone. You're going to do it online. It'll auto send out the script. And again, it's not all that dissimilar to phone banking or canvassing. You're going to have then a branched script that if somebody responds back, you've got preloaded canned responses that you can send back to them. You again, just kind of engage in an overall script in a more conversational tone that you can type out. But again, trying to specifically get them to answer a question or an ID on that end. Super easy to do. A lot of times even more so remotely. All right, we're wrapping up here. Thanks for hanging with us. Key takeaways. Takeaway 1, phone banking is super effective, super accessible. You don't have to be in the swing state. You don't have to be in the swing district. You can find an event. You can find a way to plug in to any campaign, any supporter organization, and get to work from the comfort of your own home. But I will say it's always a lot more fun to go down to the campaign office, do it in real life, laugh about, when somebody has a bad call, you got somebody to bounce it off of. And when you have a bad one, you got someone else to bounce it off of. But it's also great too when somebody's, ringing a bell when they're finding those supporters along the way. So it's always good to do it in a group. That's why a lot of campaigns too also set up virtual phone banks where you can do it in a Zoom application, Google Hangout, something like that. Takeaway 2, the script is not designed just because they don't trust you. It is designed to specifically answer questions and get key data that they need logged back in so that they can use that data to better plan their next steps of engagement to that voter. So lean on the script. Don't read it like a canned robot on that, but don't deviate too far from it. And then again, that data that you generate is important. It needs to be timely, logged back in timely, and it needs to be accurate on that end. And again, those non-contacts and those bad phone numbers are not waste of your time. You're cleaning up lists, and every campaign is generally a campaign in generating a list, narrowing that list, and then executing that list. So even if you're getting bad numbers, don't get discouraged. All right, that is it from me. I so appreciate your time today. I know NDTC always appreciates an evaluation of what I presented and certainly what they drew up on this. So please do fill out that evaluation link. I can take it. It helps me get better if you've got something critical to say, so let it rip. But if you've got any questions or if you want to try and get more involved in NDTC, this live training at traindems.org email address is often responded to in very short amount of time. So don't feel hesitant in utilizing that and reaching out. And again, as a reminder, next week's opportunity here, the next 2, will be learning how to help supporters make plans to vote. One of the most key social science data outcomes of any Democratic campaign is not just asking for a voter to support you, but actually helping them think through how they're actually going to go about doing that. So that's what the next 2 trainings are going to be. Super essential in the closing days of any campaign to get comfortable with that and get excited and get trained up on it. So join us next week. And a huge thanks on behalf of NDTC and all White Dudes for Harris. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Zach. Really appreciate it. thank you to Josh and Rob for being on the call today. And then especially thanks to each and every one of you who watched this training. This election is going to ultimately come down to the things that we are all willing to do together to help get Vice President Harris across the finish line. That is just how it's going to be. We are going to have, in politics, we call them field margins. Margins that are so small that they're basically the result of a really good field operation. And that's why we need folks like you out there volunteering, making phone calls, knocking on doors, sending text messages, sending letters. Every single thing that you do counts. And that's why we're doing this training series, is to get folks more comfortable with the idea of doing this work, give folks opportunities to get plugged in, and ultimately get out there and get the vice president elected president. If you want to get more opportunities, there is a QR code on the screen that you can scan and fill out the form, and we will be able to send you more volunteer opportunities. Specifically, probably starting at the end of this week, we're going to do weekly volunteer roundups that will have links to all sorts of things that are going on out in the space, both on the campaign and through other organizations that we know and trust. If you want to volunteer directly with the campaign, they have options for phone banking, canvassing, getting on a bus, and going to a swing state. Whatever it is that you're able to do, it's go.kamalaharris.com. It will give you an option to say where you live and say the types of things that you're interested in doing, and then it will pull up in the dates that you're available, and it will pull up a whole list of things that you're able to work on. And with that, I just, again, want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Getting to see all of the people on, especially participating in the chat, is always really, really inspiring for me. And, both Josh and Rob inspired me to sign up for some additional shifts myself. So again, with that, I will close this out 2 minutes early. Thank you again for getting on, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks again.